Okay, so we're going to call the meeting to order. We're hoping to have quorum so we could vote, but we do not. So we're going to just start, and hopefully somebody will be able to come in and fill us out. Let's see, where are we going to start? So I'm going to call to order somebody. 4:39, okay. Start with public comment.
Correct.
All
Yep.
right.
Read
All
that
right,
sentence.
so we'll start with public comment. The Family Life Advisory Committee welcomes and encourages public comment. Registration to participate in public comment begins 30 minutes before the posted start time of the meeting. Public comment is not intended to be a question and answer platform with the committee members, and generally, the committee members will not respond to the comments made. All those registered to give public comment will be granted 3 minutes and will be asked to complete comments when the buzzer sounds. A total of 30 minutes is allocated for public comment on today's agenda. Those members of the public wishing to share additional comments, they may do so by emailing flacinformation@fcps.org. So, no, we don't have anybody today.
We don't have any public comment.
All right. So what we'll do next is we will go around and introduce the members. Why don't we start over there?
I'm Casey Nixon. I'm your teacher representative. I'm at TJ Middle School.
I'm Elijah Steele. I'm the Frederick County student member of the board.
Karen Yoho,
Kate Majewski, Urbana Feeder.
Callie Zanarini for the Linganore feeder.
Devin Thoden at large and Frederick High School feeder.
Yowandi Oladindi at large.
Monica Cecil with the Health Department.
Raven Jones at the Walkersville feeder.
Jen Metcalf, the community representative for Intimate Partner Violence and also TJ Feeder.
I'm Jess Valentine. I'm the Health and PE Teacher Specialist.
Robin Seidel, I'm the healthcare professional.
Brian Griffith, health and specialist for pre-K to 12 health and physical education staff liaison for the board,
Okay,
for the committee.
okay. Let's look over last meeting minutes and if there's any changes, and then we'll approve those.
Can't.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can't do that. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah, we can.
There's a guy out there in the street. Trap him in there. You can't do that. But you can look him over, just in case there is something that has to be changed, we'll just keep him. Okay.
One of the things, I'm sorry for asking Ms. Yoho, but, or Elijah, we did have a resource, Love Labyrinth, that this committee did approve, and it did go to the board during a work session last week. I'm happy to say that the board did approve it, and it is going to move forward as a resource for high school. So Love Labyrinth was approved by the board last week, so we will be able to move forward. Jess and I will be able to move forward with some resources for that.
Okay.
And I would like to thank the board because, again, we just approved that video in November, and the board already reviewed it and has already been able to, we can start developing resources to support that. So that is extremely fast turnaround. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let me start on
No, the Black Guidelines Amendment.
that. Oh,
So charter
that's right.
schools.
Okay. So on old business, the FLAC Guidelines Amendment, we went and asked the various charter schools some questions like, do you follow the required time for health education? Do you follow the FCPS health education regulations? And
We did
everyone get a copy?
we did get, no. We did get back from all four schools, oops, sorry, that was me. All four schools, they gave us their numbers. Carroll Creek has about a little over 300 students. Frederick Classical has about 380 students total. Monocacy Valley Charter School has about 420 students, and Sibyllesville has about 200 students. All of them have said that they do work with us. Their teachers do, most of them do participate in our training. We're lucky in that Sibyllesville has The teacher there is a daughter of a retired health and PE teacher, so she's been connected in our system for a long time. She knows a lot of stuff, and she's been connected to me as well. So she's gotten resources at Sibyllesville. A few of our other teachers, they've been with us for a few years, with us for multiple years, and do kind of understand our expectations and things like that. So you did ask us to ask about the number of students. Do they follow the required time, and then the essential curriculum as well, and then training for teachers. And all of the schools did say yes. Sibyllesville, because of their size, we did make some modifications in their schedule, but they do meet the essential curriculum. It's just spread out a little bit differently in health. Health and PE is separate. And so we created a schedule in order to meet their needs for their middle schoolers because of their size. Up on here, I did, just as a reminder, put the members of the FLAC. And so again, these are the guidelines that are identified by this committee and then recommended to the board as well. So discussion, questions?
So would the expectation be, or the recommendation be, that one person represents all the charter schools?
So just as one of you represent the whole feeder of that school system, yes. So basically, the first members that one parent or guardian from each of the 10 high school feeders, it would also say, and a representative of the charter schools. Questions, comments, issues, anything else? Seems like an easy change. So we'll make that change and then recommend, and then Yoho and Mr. Steele will take that to the board for changes for the guidelines to recruit people for next school year. Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, new business. When we started to talk about the pornography and children's access to it, and we really felt that we should have a definition of what is pornography. And so we've been working on that. And so, do you have that?
Yep, I'm going to put it up.
Oh.
So we have, so this is not really something, this is something that Jess and I are looking for input from you all. This is not something that necessarily has to go to the board for approval in order to implement, but we are going to be looking for resources in order to support this once you kind of give us input on the definition. So there are only two objectives that really identify sexually explicit media, one in Health 1 and one in Health 2. So out of the total number of objectives, we're not talking about a whole lot of time that's going to be dedicated to this, but we do have social media and other things that are attached in there that could be linked up to it. The definition, this is a sample definition that we would like feedback on. Sexually explicit media, the depiction of sexual behavior that is intended to arouse sexual excitement in its audience.
I think the language could be intended differently, because if we were implying this language, it can be applied to movies as well that are cause sexual arousal. Say a quick pet, that would be considered porn as well. So the language has to be a bit precise, which I know is difficult.
So would you like to see specific things put into the definition?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, one of the issues, as Robin said, is just the amount and the percentage of students that are actually accessing pornography. And again, we don't have specific information for FCPS. That is not a question that we ask our students. But looking at national data, we know teenagers are about 40 to 60%, depending on the survey, are accessing pornography on a regular basis. And then the issue is how they are accessing that as well, and what different resources and things like that. So
is this term sexually explicit media supposed to be synonymous with pornography? Because we're kind of throwing those around it together.
So the sexually explicit media is in the objective.
Yeah,
So
that's in
if-
the teaching, yeah. So that's what we're kind of using to cover pornography?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that this is probably larger than pornography. Like
Okay.
Elijah was
really broad.
kind of saying.
It is,
Okay.
it's quite vague, and I
Yeah.
think, I'm sorry, were you
No,
finished?
I'm,
Okay.
yeah.
We had kind of briefly touched on it when we were talking about the minutes before, but like, there are shows that are intended for adults that there is sexual behavior shown in the show. Outlander, that's my favorite. That can, cause arousal, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call that pornography. So if we're going to be.
Call it sexually explicit media?
I would
Yes.
call it sexually explicit
Yeah.
media, yes, but again, but if we're using sexually explicit media and pornography synonymously, I think we need to.
It's not not.
So sexually explicit media is the broad term, and then pornography would be one of those things underneath sexually
Under the
explicit media.
umbrella, correct.
Sorry. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
I was lost on that, so thank you for the clarification.
I also think something should be added as far as books and reading and explicit material
That's
in
what I was
books.
gonna say, the depiction, comma, in writing or visual, or,
Right.
Sexual behavior, imagery. Should we touch on consent in sexually explicit media? Because I would hope and we should assume that sexually explicit media that is, displayed on TV shows, movies, books, etc., if it involves a real human adult, then there should have been some sort of consent in that. Do we think that we should touch on consent?
I think that may be out of scope.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that
And isn't there another?
conversation happening.
said.
Yeah, I don't think that should be in the definition.
Okay. I'm just thinking of ensuring that the definition would make sure that people understand that the folks who are depicted in these sexual acts are probably paid actors who are consenting.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I think, but the
Yeah.
other piece of it is the sharing of pictures and things of real people that also feeds into it, right? Which the person a teenager may consent to taking that picture and sending it, not realizing that.
So maybe we could put that somewhere in pornography.
I think,
or
I don't know,
something. Yeah,
or that might be in a separate curriculum.
yeah.
Okay, you use the word pornography, or for the curriculum, it has to be sexually explicit media.
I think pornography
Part of
is
the type of
a
sexual-
part of
It
this.
is a part of
So-
it. I'm saying, can you use the term
Yeah.
pornography? Okay. I
That's what he's
wasn't
saying, he's asking us to add, if there was a colon.
Including
So
pornography.
if you can even
Blah,
use
blah,
that
blah,
word,
blah.
I didn't know if it was like a banned word or something.
God, if we get to that point.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, could we just go back to slide one? I just think
Objectives?
refreshed, because we're talking about this in the context of these objectives, right? So that's really important to me, so I want to make sure that we are looking at that.
What do you guys think about music? Some of the lyrics of some of the music, or is that getting too
We're
fine?
not talking about policing anything
Right.
now.
It's there.
But media to me is the written word, written media, art,
Could be anything.
music and
Yeah.
TV, imagery, any sort of, So I think media covers all of that. And because at school, at my kids' school, they don't call it library, they call it media. because it's all of those
It's all of it.
things, which is interesting.
involved
I
very much.
I always call, oh, you gotta return your books to the library.
We do.
They're like, I don't have media today.
Media today.
So that shifted my thinking to really encompass all of those things.
Should we, I mean, Robin, would you like to see a like in the sexually explicit media definition, would you like for it to say, videos, images, audio recordings, written material? Should we include that in there?
I think there's some parents
I
that
thi-
might appreciate the warning. Things have changed since I had kids in school. And the thing is, once it's seen, it's not unseen. Once it's heard, it's not unheard. And I did some research when we were talking about this, and what it does to a child's brain is awful. What it does to an adult's brain is really awful, but what it does to a child's brain is terrible. And so I think it's something that should be taken seriously. You can't, you're not going to stop it all, let's face it. If they really want to see it, or a friend really wants to show it to them, they'll find a way to sneak it through. But
we're not gonna be able to stop them. That's not the purpose of this. The
Right.
purpose is to
just to
for
understand
them to
what
understand that they're not learning their healthy
That-
relationships
yes.
from the
Yes.
videos. or
Yes.
media.
for them to understand this is serious, this is important, and really, there's some things here that might surprise you. What is considered pornography by adults and not necessarily by the kids.
Well, I think that's, again, the clarity around sexually explicit versus pornography,
Yeah.
right? And I think, at least for me, I'm getting caught up on the intended to arouse,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that somebody might think is sexually explicit, but it's just,
Girl in a bikini.
I mean,
right, girl in a bikini.
It's not intended
Think of any Renaissance painting where everyone is naked, right?
Those
But
are
that's,
Rubens.
there was never any, I don't know if there was any, ever an intention for someone to
Right.
experience arousal based on seeing that. So I also want to make sure that, I don't know how we get that across, but I think the intended part is really important, right? Because again, even if you're reading a book or watching something, somebody kissing their partner might arouse you, but that doesn't mean it's sexually explicit.
And I want to just,
So, yeah,
But there's
it's a tough
beginning
fix.
part of it that is the depiction of sexual behavior. So it has to
Yes,
be,
yeah,
and when I hear depiction, that means you're deliberately acting or drawing or doing
Right,
something
yeah.
To arouse people.
right.
I have two more. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really big on this because it's really important
Yeah.
for me that we
Get it right.
get this right because it's very niche, so it's
Yeah.
important. But I think we should add in the depiction or description because I don't think the depiction is the only thing.
Yeah.
And I also think that, again, sexually explicit media, I mean, when you think about it, there could be a depiction or a description of a rape that's sexually explicit, but is it designed to, is it intended to arouse sexual excitement? Not necessarily.
Still
So,
consider that as explicit, and that's why, when you had asked that
Right.
earlier, I wonder if it shouldn't be, is intended to arouse sexual excitement in its audience, or
because I think that falls more under
non-consensual
pornography.
sexual behavior or something, because it's,
Because if we're going to put sexually explicit at the top and then pornography under, pornography is intention to arouse sexual excitement. Sexually explicit media,
Does not
it could
necessarily.
yeah, it could just be the overt depiction or description of sex acts or nudity, period.
I like that nudity part
Yeah.
because I was thinking like sexting, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
That's sexually explicit media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would also cover.
Yes.
But with this definition, I don't think that's fully captured in some sense. So like if a student is trying to play pranks or something and like takes a picture of someone in the bathroom, right, unknowingly and starts texting that around, that's sexually explicit media, but they're not engaging in any kind of sexual behavior. They're just using the bathroom. They just didn't know that a picture was being taken.
Right.
So
And it's meant to shame,
Yeah.
potentially not. Around,
The
do
arousal.
anything else.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But I think where we get into that slippery slope area that I think trips up so many people in trying to define this is also being careful that we aren't making it so detailed that now we're setting up a place for people to say, well, we need to ban this from our libraries because you said this was sexually explicit and it's talking about a rape, but it's in the context of someone's memoir or story that's,
Right.
you know, so it's like, that's where I want to be careful before
So
we get,
much.
like, too in the weeds that
Yeah,
can be
yeah.
used.
In a different way, yeah.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, because there's so much classic literature that I read in high school that is explicit, sexually explicit, violent. And that doesn't mean that those need to be, that's not bad, you know? So I agree.
So like, are we defining it just so it's better understood? And are we able to define it so that it, just in this context, but not so that it can be used as Flack said?
Should we just define it in regards to those those two
Curriculum items.
Right. In regards to forming healthy relationships, the first one.
Yeah.
And in regards to, what was it? I don't
It
remember.
was like sharing, right?
about
Can you go back to
That five back up.
Like, yeah, like underage, like sharing underage.
Yeah, yeah.
Crossing state lines or something, you know?
About including the texting or sharing images.
Yeah.
Second objective. And when I look at the definition of depiction, right, it just says a representation in words or images. So with the word depiction, it already captures that, and we don't necessarily need to put words. Just to your point, Jen, like, you know, if it's part of someone's memoir, it happened to them, that's their experience, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna stay quiet for a while, but I was going the same place you were, since we just had, you know, in the recent past, the 35 books reviewed. And I also kind of laughed at the beginning with pornography, since the Supreme Court really had trouble defining it.
Yes.
In regards to the books, then that was specific books. What the Supreme Court has said and what law says is that you can't cherry pick, you can't just pull
Right.
things out. And so I think intention is very much the key word, as, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who said, yes, I very much agree with you, because a lot of times these books that were objectionable, there were some explicit passages, but they were in the context of somebody's maybe memoir, or it had a purpose other than
Right, just that.
arousal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because rape, and people can be, kind of wonder if somebody is aroused from a rape scene that's not intended to be.
Right, and you can't,
So,
yeah, can't. You can go back to the curriculum, sorry.
Split screen it, Brian, at this point.
The definition is big enough, at least for me, that I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our first time.
So I guess it's, because these are objectives we already currently teach
Correct.
against. So I guess maybe what's an example of something we would do for like the first one? Right, and you're explaining the impact. What do we currently do? Are there any kind of exercises or
So
discussions that already happen?
yeah, so basically, it's just, well, in Health 2, that's the easier one because of how clear it is.
Yes.
Going back to laws. But in Health 1, again, the issue is, as Jess was saying, talking about just the impact of the relationships. It's not clear. It is the issues related to people seeing pornography or other sexually explicit media and believing that that's how relationships work. And so discussing the fact that it is fiction, it's not real. We need to be sure of, and as you said, consent is taught every single year. But in anything, consent is there as well. And again, the main focus of all of our programs is to teach abstinence first. So, you know, we're hoping that kids are not engaging, and we see our numbers going down engaging in sexual behaviors, but we still see our kids engaging in sexual behaviors as well. So that's going to be there, but.
I guess the biggest part of this for me is tying in the second objective into that definition. because as it is now, I don't think that second objective is really, it's not really coming to the surface for me as when I read that definition.
Well, yeah, because you're not gonna get in any trouble with any laws if you're bringing a sexually explicit book to somebody, really. You know, like,
Yeah.
I don't, I feel like that's more direct, like that's a more specific example of a specific type of that material for the second Health 2. Health 1 is very, like, it can be, a book has a crappy relationship, you know, a comic book, a TV show, anything. But
What's nice about Health 2 is we can go to state statute and say,
it's got a definition.
here's, yeah, exactly.
You know, that one is so can that definition not just be the one that's applied to Health 1 as well? I don't know.
It might be too strict.
It might be really silly because sometimes the law definitions are so, you know, too distinct and direct, so.
So I think maybe if we work backwards on,
Yeah.
for Health 1, right?
Yeah.
For the first objective, let's think about if we want to say that sexting, pornography, et cetera, you know, books, graphic scenes that could be in TV shows, do we feel comfortable with all of those falling under the definition that we have put out for sexually explicit media if we were to use those as examples in what is not a healthy relationship? Yeah, does everybody make, like, I don't know. No? No. Okay.
Sorry.
So like,
Yeah.
so I'm working back.
I know you are, that's why I'm like.
It's been a weird week. We've all been sick at my house. But anyway, so what I'm thinking is I'm trying to put myself in the classroom setting, and I'm thinking to myself, if I wanted to explain to a class of kids how sexually explicit media can impact expectations on a healthy relationship, can I use that definition that we have on slide 2 and fully feel like I can encompass everything that I want to say is not a healthy depiction? So if I say, let's look at this TV show, does that fall under that definition? If I say it's sexting, does that fall under that definition? Taking a picture of somebody without their consent, does that fall under that definition? So that's where I'm going, is I just want to make sure that everything that we, yeah.
I agree, but I don't think it necessarily has to be all in a negative light.
That's what, yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was thinking too.
That's-
It's something could, I mean, it's possible for something to be sexually explicit, but be depicting a good.
Yeah, exactly.
healthy, either sexual relationship or whatever, activity.
Right. So, yeah,
So,
I should have been more clear.
but no,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, I'm just, yeah.
Because like I don't want somebody to fall into the red tape situation where they're like, oh, I can't talk about this because it doesn't fall under the definition that's been laid out. That's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But that's because I work for the government and red tape is kind of my
Yes,
thing.
that's your thing.
So I'm used to it. So I'm like, let's make sure that we don't limit anybody in that.
I think if we included a definition of media in there, that would encompass all of those things, and that gives a little bit more of the specifics that we were looking for. But I do think that nudity should be included, because I don't think it needs to be a behavior.
Yeah.
I agree with the intention and all of that, but I think just a little more specifics, but including nudity would cover some of the things we're talking about.
So like sexual behavior.
So media, including videos, images,
Audio, yeah.
that depicts, media, including these things, which depicts sexual behavior or nudity.
Depicts or describes, if you're gonna talk words, right?
Depicts is, I think depicts is fine, because that encompasses everything. But I don't think we should have intends to arouse.
Yeah,
That-
that intent.
that-
What about, that's not,
It's hard to.
But that's the core of the
that's
issue
the
though,
core of the issue.
right? Because
Otherwise, it can be.
anything.
Because that's where we get to that spot where you were saying, and the the books and things that can be banned because they describe something that happened that's not supposed to.
You also can't control for how anybody's going to interpret it.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know, the English Patient, you know, which Seinfeld made so much fun of, but I found that a very sensuous movie, where other people would think, oh God, it was so long and boring, you know, so what was their intention? I don't know. That's kind of on the other end that you can't control. So that's why I kind of think the intention.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and maybe that, you know, maybe that needs to be some of the focus of the lesson, right? What's the intention of the piece of media? If we were discussing a piece of media, what's the intention of this piece of media that we're talking about today? Is it to educate? Is it to whatever? Is it just existing, like a painting, for example, right? It was an artistic choice at the time, or is it only to do the, you know?
Yeah, because if we
To
remove
arouse.
intended to arouse, then the videos about anatomy that we're approving would actually fall under that definition. You know? So that's why it's like, it's difficult.
I've been trying to figure out how to change that around. So this third tab, the depiction of sexual behavior and nudity that is intended to arouse sexual excitement in its audience through images, video, audio.
Well, I think, I still don't,
Think we need that last little bit?
I
Or?
just don't like the idea of like rapes being intended to arouse sexual
I don't
excitement.
either.
Like intended to arouse, like I'm trying to think of verbiage that would work. But that I can't wrap my head around.
Where would the sexually explicit media definition, we wouldn't teach about rape in our,
But
that's
you
not in our
wouldn't teach
objective.
about that to say that's not part of a healthy relationship. If you know, like that's, to me, that falls under part of this first section of it, right?
Well,
Health
I think
one?
it's that intention piece. That's why I think the intention needs to be in there, because the depiction of it
In itself is
in and
not.
of itself is not intended to.
So it's not sexually explicit then?
Because that's where I'm
Okay.
struggling too, is like sexually explicit umbrella of pornography under it, but if pornography is the intention to arouse, sexually explicit could just be anything with anybody who's nude or experiencing a sexual behavior or nudity.
That's
It's
what
tough
I
for me.
think of it as more so. So maybe I just have a different
I don't know.
version of it in my brain. So
Well, it's in mine too, so we're
I
good.
don't.
So your feeling is that the way it's worded, if it's intended to arouse sexual excitement, then it is pornography.
No, I'm not talking about pornography. I'm just saying that sexually explicit could be behavior or nudity that could elicit sexual excitement in its audience.
Illicit is different than intended.
Yes.
to.
Yeah, I know, but
And that's why I think the intended is so important.
Well, that's the,
Teenagers, they're all.
I know, this is a very specific thing. I don't think I'm understanding, because I don't think I
so
understand.
could it be something like that's intended to arouse or could elicit, what did you say, Jen? You said something, wasn't you?
Like, a lot of stuff has been said.
Could elicit sexual excitement is what I think you said. Maybe including that.
So the intention is more important than the outcome.
So, like,
I think so, yeah.
I have a
Okay.
couple things that, like, we provide our teachers that are not presented to our students. But resources for our teachers to have a better understanding, and one of the things I just pulled, it says, this type of media is created primarily to elicit sexual arousal or provide a direct representation of sexual themes. And again, that's not something the students get, that's from a resource.
So maybe including that in the definition, intended to arouse or could elicit sexual.
Because it says it's created primarily to elicit sexual
Right, so I think that's
arousal.
the important part.
So that's the part that needs to be.
If you're talking about, because again, if we're talking about in the context of the curriculum, right? The curriculum is asking us to help them understand inappropriate depictions of sexual behavior and relationships,
Yes.
not a full broad discussion of all sexually
All
explicit
sexual things,
material.
right.
It's coming back
The objectives,
to, helping them understand good versus bad, essentially.
And I think too, back to like that first objective, it's again, a good to remember that we're talking about healthy relationships in a lot of other spaces, not just tied to this. So they're
Right.
getting that a lot. But I think talking about the impact it can have on relationships, I think is the point of that first one, like how it can negatively affect your view of sex, your view of how we treat other people.
And that's kind of was asking what we already give, because not saying the definition is obviously important, but it almost also doesn't matter if you're trying to tell them this is what's healthy.
In what context?
And this is what could be unhealthy, right? Could be unhealthy, because at the end of the day, this type of media could be good or it could be bad,
Right.
depending on what it is somebody's looking at.
But if it's being shown and then explained, this is a poor depiction
Right.
of healthy sexual relationship, this is a positive depiction, then that intention goes out the window
Yes,
for me
yeah,
at that point.
to some point, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's,
That's what I'm saying, it almost doesn't matter, the definition, but it does, it's important, but like.
What's sad is that some people are seeing, kids are seeing this and thinking it's normal. in their
Well, but
house.
some of it, but.
But it's not all
but-
bad,
but
yeah.
It's not all bad, I guess is what we're.
No.
So I feel like sometimes we're talking about sexually explicit media as being bad. It's not
It's
bad
not.
inherently. It's just a discussion opener for these two topics that we're focusing on right here. And in the second one, it is bad.
Yes.
So the second one should be.
that one's easy.
We can't change this, but it should be like negative sexually explicit. I don't know. But
So how about this? How about Jess and I rework some of the stuff to focus on specifically the first one in healthy relationships?
yeah, that's the hard one.
And then because the second one is so specific, basically child pornography, that one is clear, and the media related to sharing media related to minors. So if we kind of rework the definition for that includes healthy relationship, then that would take anything out of, hey, I'm going to take this for books or as something or whatever else, and then that will help Jess and I and our leaders move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so next meeting, Jess and I will have a revised definition focusing on healthy relationships that will support that first objective, and that will give us some guidance in order to move forward. Sound good? Perfect. I appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much. That's why I wanted to bring it to you. We need your
Moving
feedback.
on. We're done with this one. I have a really quick question, and it's very easy, I promise. I'm not gonna be problematic anymore. But do either of those objectives in the high school realm, do they encompass human trafficking? Okay,
So, well, yeah, so that's others.
There's other objectives on human trafficking.
okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to know. I'm just curious, because I was like, I guess you could kind of fit it under either one, but it feels like it should be its own. I was
We
just
do have separate objectives.
okay. Awesome.
And we've been lucky to have Hartley House come in, as well as forensic nurse from Frederick Health also come in and do presentations to our staff on trafficking.
Love that.
So,
Because I just closed 2 sex trafficking cases this week, so I'm like, yes, let's get that on there. Let's get this done. Okay.
perfect. So unfortunately, last 2 items, we cannot move forward, we can't approve, but they are in there. We will put those on the next agenda. If you would like to look at those ahead of time, you're more than welcome to, and we'll just put those on the next agenda for review and approval. That wraps up, unfortunately.
What we're gonna-
5:17.
You didn't want that guy out in the street, so.
Can I make a shameless plug? So, speaking of trafficking, on Friday, January 31st, the Human Trafficking Response Team is putting on their annual summit. It's $20. There are going to be 5.5 CEUs for social workers from the Maryland State Board of Social Work. So if you, can I send you a link that you can put in the minute, or that you can send out with the minutes?
Yeah.
Would that be?
Yes.
Okay, so we can send that out.
Yeah, Brian.
So we still have some spots open, but this is probably going to be our best lineup ever. We have someone from the NCMEC, which is the National Institute for, was it Missing and Exploited Children, is going to be there to talk about child trafficking. We have a survivor who's going to be speaking about the impact of how the language we use around trafficking and victims. And then there's just going to be like the overview from the state's attorney's office in Hartley House on the last year and what the numbers for Frederick County. So it's going to be fantastic. And we're going to start working with FCPS on how we can distill this and disseminate it to teachers, because obviously they can't just take it off on Friday. And where is that? It is at the Law Enforcement Center behind the airport, where the sheriff's office is. That's where it's going to be this year. Okay, so.
For motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And second. Somebody give, actually, somebody give a motion to adjourn?
I thought you were giving them up.
She can't, she has the chair.
I'll make the motion then.
Okay,
Thank you.
I second the motion.
It's like second, but no. Okay.
Perfect. I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much. We'll see, when's the next, March 11th?
Do you want to save these for the next meeting?
Yes, please. If you just leave them there, I'll come around and collect them.